Hello everyone and welcome to the NARSA weekly update for the week commencing Monday the 7th of March 2022. It's Gary here again, and when I thought that all we'd need to be talking about this week was two very important victories for our team alongside the real kick-off of the 150th anniversary celebrations for our club decided that this week of all weeks was the appropriate time to completely bungle the announcement about a glamour, in inverted commas, friendly tournament in Australia later this year that included a game against a team that could be called many, many things, but most certainly not friend. So more about that later. Let's just get on with the games that I mentioned a wee second ago there. On the games front, I could almost say the exact same match synopsis for both of the league games from this past week. Firstly, and most importantly, we had two league victories, of course, and including two clean sheets, which is absolutely what the doctor ordered after our very patchy run of defeat and a bunch of draws throughout February, which saw us surrender our commanding lead atop the Scottish Premiership table. But let's get through this game segment as quickly as we can, because there's not a lot of entertaining stuff to really talk about in there. The first game was away to very much a struggling St Johnstone last Wednesday night, where we ran out 1-0 winners thanks to a very early and very well worked goal from man of the match Glenn Kamara. And I thought after getting the early goal that we'd go on and make it a bit more comfortable for ourselves, but we just could not muster up the creativity or inventiveness to get ourselves that second goal. And of course, not that a 2-0 lead would not have been a precarious position to be in after the previous week's capitulation at the hands of Motherwell, but it would have been something to build from and maybe an opportunity to go and claw back some of the goal difference we're seeing between us and the mob from the East End. Alas, the second goal, or any more than that either, was not to be, and it was a bit of a strange team selection for me, with our two loanees out of the two major high impact supposed loanees out of the squad altogether. And I think it was last week I was talking about them, maybe the week before, and saying that they just haven't really had any material impact for us, save for Ahmad's debut goal at Ross County in the 4 or 5 minutes into his debut. And for me, it's becoming quite apparent now that we're just running out of games for these guys to do anything material for us and make their loan periods with us successful. Quite simply, they just haven't worked out, and that can happen with any signing, and it can happen more so especially with loan signings. And it's a shame, because it was a very exciting time when we brought them in the first place, and to get someone with that price tag from Manchester United and someone directly from Juventus who's still a Welsh international, that's just the way it goes. Oh well. Anyway, back to the game. The pitch was an absolute mess, completely awful the whole game, and we didn't create a bunch of chances, as I'd kind of mentioned before there, and it was just one of those performances when we'll look back and remember almost next to nothing from the game other than the goal, the 3 points, and the banners protesting the Aussie friendly, I'm afraid. A couple of good things from the game. We really didn't give St Johnstone a meaningful sniff at goal. We didn't get any injuries. We collectively defended much better than we did at the goals we conceded in the Dundee United and Motherwell games. It was a bit strange that I thought anyway that Giovanni didn't make one single substitution against St Johnstone, when very obviously there were players out there absolutely knackered, and Joe Aribo and Scotty Arfield come to mind as being in the shattered category on that. But other than that, not too much to talk about on the game. On the referee watch, Willie Collum had a relatively incident-free game as far as I can remember. He was his usual lenient self with St Johnstone and a little bit harsh on us, but he didn't negatively impact the game or the result, and I don't recall being hugely frustrated with him. So I'm going to be generous tonight, give him a 7 out of 10 for this game. Our second game was at home to Aberdeen. Our second game was at home to Aberdeen in what was supposed to be a day of celebration for our 150th anniversary, as I'd mentioned a wee while ago there, including a fan zone with entertainment outside the stadium, and an amazing tifo display organised by the Union Bears that displayed the history of some of the club badges over 150 years, some iconic moments in our history, and a very staunch red, white and blue theme, with all fans being given a kind of poncho sort of thing. That's what it looked like on the TV anyway, to colour coordinate everyone, and it looked absolutely stunning. So a huge congratulations, thanks goes to everyone involved in that. I know there was some significant fundraising efforts to get that one going. Unfortunately, there's just a wee bit of a weird atmosphere surrounding the club right now. I think mostly due to the friendly announcement, which I'll get onto later, and that seems to have an impact on the overall enjoyability of watching the team right now. Anyway, the game was very similar, as I mentioned, to the St Johnstone game, and that we just didn't play that great, and most certainly we have played much better against Dundee United and Motherwell as an example, and we dropped points in both of those games. So to start playing a lot less fluid and creating vastly less clear-cut chances, and generally looking a little bit sluggish and still winning the games with clean sheets, thrown in, it's just kind of weird, but very welcome, of course, after the trials and tribulations that we did not enjoy so much of in February. We did have more chances in this game, I think, maybe in comparison to the St Johnstone game, but we just don't seem to be getting any breaks anywhere in and around the area at all. And I think it was something like the 72nd minute before we had an actual shot on target. Lots of highs and wides, but apart from hitting the outside of the post a little bit earlier in the second half, by a very, seems to be a very out of form and somewhat ineffective Fashion Sakala, there wasn't lots to get overly excited about in the game. It was a typical Aberdeen performance where they run their guts out and put in a really strong shift from start to finish. And I know I've probably said this before, I have no clue how the Aberdeen fans put up with that level of intensity against just one team in the league, and then they are just dog water for the remaining 11 teams that they play against. That's the reason they're third bottom of the league, which is kind of nice to see, to be perfectly honest, and I really hope they stay there so that we don't have to play them after the league split come mid-April. One can only hope. It's very tight between the top six and the bottom of the table as well, so I guess we'll need to see. The game was decided by a ball bundled in from Kamar Roof just a minute after he came on, interestingly enough, which is always fun to see, which at the very first glance, I have to admit, I thought it could have been offside, but on replay, the ref and the linesman got it absolutely spot on, as there were two Aberdeen players playing Roof onside. It was just a thoroughly turgid match overall, and a bit difficult on the eye, but as I say, you can't sneer at 6 points and 2 clean sheets in the league in the 1 week, so we'll take it and we'll move on. On the referee watch, John Beaton was kind of similar to Willie Collum from the St Johnstone game in midweek. He didn't make any real game-changing decisions, and the only potential mistake that he made was only providing the yellow card to the Aberdeen Ned, who completely emptied out Scotty Arfield right at our technical area late in the game. I wouldn't have been completely shocked if that had been a red card, but I think the guy was probably giving Scotty a wee bit of payback, because he took out one of their guys unpunished, actually, and just a wee bit, a minute or so before it, so maybe a little bit of karma there. But then the referee provides some sort of incredible magic to conjure up 5 minutes of stoppage time, which had to have been a wee bit of pre-practice for April Fool's Day, because there's absolutely no way that match had 5 minutes warranted or merited, from an extra time perspective. Strange one. Anyway, since I'm somewhat happy that I don't have to complain about referees as much this week, I'll give Beaton the same as I gave Collum, and he gets a 7 out of 10. Not too bad there. So since the winter break, we've played 10 league games now. We've won 5, we've drawn 4, and we've lost 1. Of a possible 30 points, we've picked up 19, which, as I have mentioned a number of times over the past few shows, it's surefire second place form right there. However, there's always another way to look at it, and despite our shocking results since the winter break, we're still only 3 points behind the East End mob. So There's lots still to play for, we still have to play them twice, and that's not sounding, I don't want it to make it sound like it's any sort of desperate mathematics or anything like that. It's just simple facts. If we win our next 8 games in the same fashion as we did the last 2 games of last week, then we win the championship, and that's a fact. We just need to stop the draws and find a way to win every single game. Do we have it in us to win all 8? I truly don't know. My gut says probably not, but the counter to that is that I don't think Celtic will win all of their games either. So it's likely going to go down to the wire, I'm sure, and it's going to get pretty tense and exciting as well. And I'm still hopeful of having 4 trophies available to us at the NARSA convention in Las Vegas in June. The fourth one being the replica Barcelona 1972 trophy, and the other 3 being the 3 remaining competitions that we are still in. You just never know. You never know. This week we've got 2 games, one in the last 16 of the Europa League and one in the league. The first one is the Europa League match against Red Star Belgrade this week at home at Ibrox, and this is on Thursday, of course, with a 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time kickoff. That's 8 p.m. in the UK. I don't know much about them at all, how they're doing or anything like that, but looking at the recent league form, they've won at least the last 5 games in a row and sit just 2 points behind Partizan Belgrade after 26 games, which shows me then that we'll need to really be at Borussia Dortmund levels to get a result that we can take over to Belgrade for the second leg next week, with an opportunity to progress to the quarterfinals. Very exciting to even just say that we're in with an opportunity of getting to the quarterfinals of a major European competition, and of course that's the target for sure. I'm sure Ibrox is going to be absolutely rocking for this one, but just a quick reminder that RTV doesn't cover any of the European matches live. They are covered exclusively through Uefa's partners, and they will be available from channels such as Paramount Plus in the US and other channels down in the US, and with DAZN in Canada as well. Second game is on Sunday away to bottom club Dundee, who are in a red hot battle right now with St Johnstone to decide who's going to get the relegation and the relegation playoff spots come the end of the season. It's not going to be an easy game, and I don't like saying that when it's almost top versus bottom, but it just never is when we go away to places like this, as most teams do in Aberdeen, and raise their game. And it's also a dress rehearsal for the Scottish Cup quarter-final fixture at the same venue the following week. The kick-off for this one this weekend is noon Eastern Standard Time. That's a 4 p.m. kick-off. But just a point to note that daylight savings times start in North America a couple of weeks earlier in the spring than they do in the UK. So we'll be 1 hour less behind the UK until the UK catches up a wee bit later in the month. So please take note of the time change and don't show up an hour later or an hour earlier than you normally would do. I don't know how people's body clocks will get a wee bit messed up by that, but just know that we're only going to be, so for example in Calgary here, for the Sunday game, we will only be 6 hours behind the UK instead of the typical 7. You have been warned. So we've played Dundee twice this season. Firstly, a 1-0 win at Dens Park later in September thanks to an early Joe Aribo goal, followed by a 3-0 victory in early December, courtesy of goals from Joe Aribo again, an own goal and Alfredo Morelos. We need to expect a tough game, and we need to do what needs to be done to get the 3 points. I've said to a number of pals over the last week, I'll take this type of turgid game and difficult to watch and tense 1-0 victory for another 8 times if it wins as the championship, but man, oh man, I'd rather get a wee bit of a comfortable victory in there now and again when we can, just to kind of make it a wee bit easier on the old nerves. For RTV, we had a couple of main club vouchers expire and had to be renewed this past week, and we have seen a lot of activity on the club payment front too. So there are a few less delinquent clubs in terms of the payments than we had from this time last week. So that's great news. Thank you to all of those clubs for stepping up and doing what we need to do. We will continue to be relentless on this one to ensure that we can get our partners at RTV paid as soon as we possibly can. I personally don't like owing anyone any money for anything, so this just doesn't sit well with me personally, but by the same token, we need to be cognizant of what we're doing in the world and where we're at, and work closely with each club to get this sorted out based on their own individual circumstances. We're not going to come in with a sledgehammer. I'm very conscious that everyone is just kind of reawakening from the various COVID restrictions that were affecting them and their club. So we're not at the kneecapping stages just yet, but we do have to bring all of this to a successful resolution this month. Another reminder, just as I mentioned last week, if your club is not paid by the end of this month, you will, or if it's not paid today, you'll be hearing from us on the executive. And if you continue to be delinquent by the end of the month, all vouchers associated with your club will be cancelled outright. And another reminder, that's just before the Old Firm game. Other than that, pretty quiet on the RTV front this week. If there are any further vouchers needed or any challenges or hassle, please contact Alan McWatt and he will get you sorted out with whatever you need. For shout-outs this week, I am absolutely delighted to share that my old man Ronnie was released from hospital last Thursday and is now at home resting. And by resting, I mean sitting on his big comfy chair, shouting obscenities at the TV for insulting his intelligence, or for some professional footballer making a mistake, or for spitting on the pitch when he's eating his dinner, that sort of stuff. Welcome home, Ronnie, and I'm still holding out hope that you're going to be joining us in Vegas for the convention, but great to have him home. And he did get to watch a replay of the return Dortmund leg and loved every single minute of it as well. At the Rangers Supporters Club of Calgary, we did indeed make our long-awaited return to the Palomino for the Aberdeen game on the weekend, and it was just great to be back amongst the troops again. Unfortunately, we had a wee bit of a disappointing 8 members and 1 guest, the one guest being from the local Liverpool Supporters Club join us. But hopefully, as the season continues into the genuine, real business end, that we see those numbers rise and we get to see some of the familiar faces in the place again. For our convention update this week, I can officially confirm that it's 86 days from today until the first official event of the 2022 convention. To put that in weeks context, that's just over 12 weeks for us to get everything sorted. It's going to be single figures here before we know it. As mentioned over the last couple of weeks, the golf is on sale, selling well. So if you plan to golf, please don't delay and get it booked. And as I mentioned, I think it was last week, that we do anticipate a few of the VIPs to be golfing as well. So you might have your opportunity to rub shoulders with them or get a wee bit of an exclusive audience with them at the tournament itself. I'll put the link to the blurb in tonight's podcast in there, and please go ahead and get that booked if you can. And as I mentioned last week, we have been very active in the VIP organising space in the past couple of weeks and are actively on that case right now. It's kind of number one priority for me right now. And you might remember that we do have a 3-pronged theme for guests, as it's such a huge event and very poignant in terms of significant anniversaries and celebrations for our club. And the 3 themes are Barcelona 72, 9 in a row, and other major contributors. So right now I can tell you that we have 8 VIP legends confirmed for the event, and another couple that are still in the works. So still more phone calls to be made. We'll work with the communications subcommittee this week for sure. I know I said that last week, but this week for sure, to get going and communicating who's going to join us so that you can truly start to see the event taking shape. And I also mentioned that last week we had sent our invite to the club, inviting club leadership and footballing staff to come and enjoy the event with us, requesting a reply by the end of this month. Then a couple of days later they announced the friendly, so I'm not 100% sure where we stand on that one right now. We're not rescinding the invite, don't read into that. But, we want to make sure that we have the right tone and the right atmosphere at the event as well. So more to follow on that one. Just in a wee while, actually, I'm going to talk about that as well. I also mentioned last week that we have our MC, David Edgar, confirmed. And due to the sheer size of Vegas 2022, we've brought on board a co-MC to ensure that we have as much coverage as possible through the event. It's just too much work for one person in an event of that size. And I am more than delighted to announce that our co-MC for Las Vegas 2022 will be David's partner in crime from the Heart in Hand, the Rangers podcast, Mr. Martin Ramsey. And for those familiar with the Heart in Hand community, you will absolutely know who Martin is. For those not so familiar, Martin is a Rangers podcaster. He's a writer and a historian, and has followed Rangers home and away for over 35 years. He is indeed a regular voice on the Heart in Hand network, covering Rangers games of past and present, as well as performing at sellout shows at Ibrox Stadium and other venues across Scotland, and I think maybe Northern Ireland as well. And you might also hear Martin asking certain questions of Giovanni and the players at press conferences too. He does a bit of that work when he can as well. And as I mentioned earlier, a bit of a writer. His book, The 50 Greatest Rangers Games, has been very warmly received by Rangers fans, and he is currently writing 2 new volumes that cover the Souness and Smith era. Souness, I guess I've just made up a name that combines both of those guys. The Souness and Smith era of 1986 to 98, in addition to his podcast Dominant. So this is brilliant news for us, and it really helps us round off that very, very important part of the team who will essentially be the heartbeat of the atmosphere and logistical flows for each of the events that we have. And I couldn't be happier to have this one over the line now. So welcome aboard, Martin. Really looking forward to working with you on this, and thanks very much again for stepping up to help out your compadre, Mr. Edgar, who more than needs the help. More VIP announcements will be forthcoming over the next couple of weeks once we have the travel booked. That's essentially why we're not telling anyone right now, just in case. It's not done until it's done, and my version of done is when we have the travel booked. So we are working on that with our travel partner, and we are definitely getting closer to that 100% confirmation. As I mentioned last week on the Absent Friends football match, we are just waiting on confirmation of the shirt supplier. It's down to 2. And we're really hoping to be in a position to get that on sale as quickly as we possibly can. We really want to get that one out there. I know that I've been saying that for quite some time, but it just doesn't go the way that we want it to go sometimes, and then we just can't announce what we need to, or want to announce at that point. So main focus, continue to clarify and qualify the VIPs, get the travel booked, and get the communications out there. Just another plug for our frequently asked questions document that we talk about every week, especially for folks that are looking to start to trade tickets for the events. Anything you need to know about what that process looks like will be on there. And what I'm going to give you a little bit of a taster of a major announcement we're going to have regarding the convention next week. And that's kind of all I'm going to say. We're going to do something that we've never done before, and we're going to do something that's very poignant and significant for us as an association, to mark a very special thing in Rangers history. I'm going to just leave it at that because I don't want any people guessing what that's going to be, but there's going to be a big announcement that we will make next week. I've just been looking for the right time to do that, and I think that now is probably that right time. On to our communications section. On the comms front, there is one very important piece of communication news, obviously, that's dominated many conversations across the globe, and I'll get to NARSA's take on that in a wee bit here. But I did want to start with something a little bit more normal before I get to that. And firstly, Rangers announced that we are in a wee bit of soapy bubble from Uefa due to spectators entering the field of play at the return leg of the Borussia Dortmund tie. And the article said, Rangers would like to remind fans that entering the field of play at any time is unacceptable and forbidden. The club have now been informed by Uefa that they have opened disciplinary proceedings after Thursday's game versus Borussia Dortmund due to children entering the pitch area. We have a zero tolerance approach to those invading the pitch. In particular, any parent found to assist their child in entering the pitch area will also be subject to club disciplinary policy. Our players have been advised that should not provide a shirt to any spectator entering the pitch area. That's just what it says. That's not my mistake or me stumbling over my words. And we've started to see a lot of that kind of kids on the pitch or signs at the side playing, Tav, can I have your shirt? over the past wee while. And while it's all fun and you know the poignancy of trying to get a hold of a player's shirt, you know, you can see the consequences for the club, and no one wants the club to get into trouble for anything, but especially things like this that are needless, you know, and this might end up being a monetary fine for the club, and we don't want that either. So it's so well said by the club on that. I also noticed an article on the Sky Sports website that talked about some progress being made in the campaign to have VAR introduced into the Scottish domestic game. It looks like we could potentially have it in place later this year, and which would be something to look forward to. For our regular listeners, you'll know that my referee watch typically doesn't serve up much in the way of praise and thanks for our referees. Maybe today's is probably the latest and most generous that they've managed to be. So whatever help they can get to drastically reduce their errors would be more than welcome. So take a peek at the article if you get a chance, and it gives just a wee bit more detail, saying that they could be ready for later in the year. They don't actually commit to a timeline in or around that. And another wee interesting tidbit is some pending changes to the UEFA Champions League, Europa League and Eurovision Song Contest League, or whatever it's called, from season 24-25 onwards. And they're doing a bit of a revamp here over all three of the tournaments. And some of the main highlights that will affect all three is going to be an increase in numbers of teams. Certainly for the Champions League, I know that to be the case, from 32 to 36 teams. There's going to be an abandonment of the existing group stage format in favour of one large league table that will include everyone. The top 8 teams will qualify for the round of 16, with playoffs for the placed teams 9th to 16th in that of the 36 team league, I guess. And they'll face home and away ties against the 17th to 24th place teams to decide who joins the top 8. So kind of one automatic qualification bucket and then some playoff buckets here. No home and away ties against the same opponents, with the chance to play a wider variety of teams is some of the appeal for the new format. So you'll get a game, you know, this would be fantastic to be part of, and hopefully by that time Rangers will be a firmly established, a bona fide member of the Champions League club once again. So pretty interesting stuff, and I do wonder how much the bungled Super League attempts a wee while back influenced this. Maybe not at all, actually, but it's going to be interesting to see how this works as we progress to this stage, and it's not going to be too long, you know, it's only a couple of years from now. And I'll put a link to the article. There's a wee bit more detail in the article if you feel like reading about that. As I mentioned last week, just another plug for Rangers are still looking for some videos to help with their daily celebrations of the 150th anniversary in the month of March. If you would like to put a video together that's only a minute long, just talking about you and your Rangers journey and what this anniversary means to you, please by all means get in touch with me directly, and I will put you in touch with Rangers SLO Greg Marshall. You can get that sorted. That can be reached at Rangers SCC, that's 2 S's and 2 C's, at hotmail.com. Okay, here we go. So since last week, Rangers were announced to be, last week's pod that is, Rangers were announced to be participating in a World Cup or winter break tour of Australia to play 2 friendly matches in the tournament that they're calling the Sydney Super Cup. And at first I thought it was a joke. Then when it got announced by seemingly everyone else involved in the tournament other than Rangers, I wasn't the only one who was taken aback by the news. And I'm mentioning this tonight on the pod, not as Gary Gillen, the Rangers fan, but as Gary, the president of the North American Rangers Supporters Association. So the fact that it's a friendly, the fact that it's in Australia, no issues with them. The issues that we have are obviously against the team that we have been announced that we're going to be playing, and that's going to be Celtic. So my own personal feelings on this are secondary to my responsibilities to represent the association to the best of my ability, of course. So we wrote to the club on Wednesday, and we wrote to Stuart Robertson, James Bisgrove, David Graham and Greg Marshall, outlining our disappointment, NARSA's disappointment, at 2 main factors. Firstly, playing that mob in a friendly, and secondly, the way the communications were just botched from the beginning. It was a very professional and courteous email, as they are all intended to be, and it ended with me saying, and I'm going to quote this part, if you don't mind. As always, I and my fellow NARSA executive members are here to proactively help in any way we can to help the club understand North American fans' points of view on how certain strategic decisions may or will land. That offer has never been off the table. A club our size should have a trustworthy, worldwide fan focus group that such things can be tested against through the decision-making process, and I'd happily be involved in helping set this up and or participating to help us avoid similar circumstances in the future. So very rarely, if ever, actually, do I ever just phone or write to complain to anyone. There's always a solution or a suggestion or two in there, and that's exactly what we intended to do with that communication. So I just don't conduct business that way. We will always offer up a positive slice on these sorts of things. So at the time of recording, which right now is 5:53 p.m. on Monday night, we have received no reply from any of the club staff, which in and of itself is just not in keeping, I should say, with our regular communication channels that we've enjoyed to date. And I want to be very clear about this. I have a great relationship with all four of the aforementioned club custodians. I have a lot of respect for each and every one of them, and I think they're all doing a fine job looking after their respective portfolios with the club. What I am very concerned about is the way that we got immediately behind on the communications, and then I have to say, we botched our reaction. We wheeled James out on a hastily put together explanatory video the next again day. Then David Edgar had him on Heart and Hands Daily Update, where he came across, a little bit exasperated and frustrated with the reaction of the fans, for the actual way that we reacted, and I just didn't think that was a good look or a good message at all. I work closely with James on a number of things, and I know for a fact that he's much better than that. I keep in regular contact with David Graham, and I've admired the sterling work he's done on the communications portfolio since he's been with us. We are much, much better on many fronts because we have guys of their calibre at the helm. That respect and admiration shouldn't be confused, however, with blind faith or loyalty. The club have dropped an absolute clanger in thinking that we'd be happy playing a friendly against that mob. Then to throw up the kind of but look at all the money that we're going to get from this. Just look at that. Attitude is incredibly naive at best, and at worst it's wholly arrogant, and I don't think that's what they were going for. The true measure of any person or any organisation that I've ever encountered is how they deal with adversity and how they recover from making mistakes, and I believe that the club has made a colossal mistake on this one. And on behalf of NARSA, I asked them to revisit this decision, to have them go full turtle and just bury themselves in the shell for almost a week with absolutely no contact or any feedback or acknowledgement of our email is completely the opposite of how we've grown to communicate with each other over the years, and I don't like it, and I don't appreciate it at all. I often say that people can put up with anything as long as they know, and even if we don't agree with something, if we can understand it, then we can decide how we feel and how we act accordingly. But the club have chose not to give us any inkling other than saying it's all about the money, and that was publicly, that was not to us. And I did say to them in the email that fan sentiment can lead to brand harm, and that has a tangible value to us. It's not all just about the blue pound immediately in the hand. And the biggest gripe, of course, that we have is playing that mob in a friendly. I explained it as best I could when I said we're not friends. We never have been. This is a club who, for the past 10 plus years, has tried to destroy us through the footballing authorities, the domestic and international legal and sports court systems, and in the court of public opinion. They were instrumental in campaigning to have us relegated to the bottom tier of Scottish football when it became clear that they couldn't have us destroyed. They tried to have titles stripped from us. They refused to formally acknowledge that we even exist. It wasn't too long ago that they tweeted from the official club account, "We aren't half of anything," referring to their stance of no longer acknowledging that the term Old Firm even exists, though they were part of a collective renewal of the trademark. Kind of strange, that one. And that's just scratching the surface of their antics. They're bad news, and they should be treated as such. I'm absolutely not averse to playing them at some point down the line in a friendly when the playing field is absolutely level and we do it in a collective and organised and team-spirited way. That's not now. It's not even close to being now. When they've been taken to court for alleged paedophile activity that's surrounded the club for decades, and certainly not during a time when their line is that we don't exist. But we do exist when they want to make some monies from our brand. No chance, man. That's just disgusting behaviour, and all of this has to be addressed before I'd even consider the notion of it. I'm just saying it's not right now. It's nowhere even close to being right now. I truly, truly hope the club don't double down on this and create any further ill sentiment on the back of this. They have a tremendous opportunity to properly engage with the fans and have meaningful dialogue with us. And my best advice is that they take this opportunity to level set on the fan relationship model and ensure that we don't end up in a similar situation in the future. And quite selfishly, and I kind of spoke about it a wee while ago, I don't want this marring any of our Q&As or any other interactions with club officials at Las Vegas 2022 if they come along. It's supposed to be a party, and we want to be celebrating as champions for sure and having the time of our lives. The negativity that's been generated from this has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed quickly. I know how I would do it, and it really isn't that complicated. It would be starting by acknowledging and validating what's happened, where we're at, by telling the truth and working on a viable dialogue and a viable solution. That's it. I'll keep everyone posted on what, if anything, that we hear formally from the club on this. And as I said, I just don't want this to drag on any longer than is absolutely necessary. So a call to action for our brothers at the club. Get this sorted and get it sorted quickly, please. That's going to do it, my friends. 2 more very important games for us this week, more so the Dundee League game for me. And another clean sheet and a victory is an absolute must. The victory for sure. The clean sheet I could forgo as long as we get the 3 points. As always, thank you very, very much for taking the time to listen, folks. And please do share it with whomever you think might enjoy it. And until next week, take care of yourselves. All the best. Cheerio.